Welcome to Moving Forward, conversations on culture, identity, healing, and hope. I'm your host, Linda Anderson, and I created this podcast as a space for real, heartfelt conversations with people who are reflecting, evolving, and boldly stepping into what's next. This podcast was born out of my own journey through seasons of loss, transition, and transformation, and my belief that healing happens when we come together to share our stories. My hope is that these conversations will inspire you to pause, reflect, and find courage as you move forward in your own life. Today's guest is Peter Cuneo, one of America's most respected turnaround leaders, best known for helping guide Marvel Entertainment from bankruptcy to becoming one of the world's most successful entertainment companies. But Peter's story is much more than business success. His journey has taken him from Alfred University in Alfred, New York, and service as a Navy officer to leadership roles at companies including Clairol, Black & Decker, Remington, and Marvel. Throughout his career, he has helped organizations navigate uncertainty, rebuild trust, and create a vision for the future. As a fellow Alfred University alumni, Peter and I share an appreciation for the experiences, relationships, and lessons that have helped shape who we became. In today's conversation, we'll explore leadership, resilience, creativity, the importance of human connection in a rapidly changing world, and what it means to build a life of purpose beyond titles and accomplishments. Peter, I want to welcome you to the Moving Forward podcast, and thank you so much for giving up some time to have this interview with me.
Linda, I'm very happy to be with you, always happy to be with you. And I enjoy these experiences. So this is no work for me at all. It's fun.
So, Peter, as I said in the intro, you and I attended Alfred University at different periods of our lifetime. What experiences there helped shape the leader you would become?
Well, this will take about 10 minutes to answer if you don't mind. But I was a very poor student when I started at Alfred. I was too young. I was a young 17. Had a lot of trouble with balancing my social life with my academic life. I had some problems at home as well that were on my mind, certainly. But first 3 years I was at Alfred, and I was a major in ceramic engineering. Alfred, as you probably know, is the #1 school in the world for ceramic engineering, ceramic science, and ceramic art. And so a very unique area. But I was just not prepared really for various reasons. I was on academic probation 3 out of my first 6 semesters. And my father got sick and couldn't work, so I left Alfred after 3 years. I'm not sure that I would ever come back. And in that 1 year that I was out, I got actually a good job in New York City for a non-college grad, but I had to give my paycheck every week to my mother. I kept nothing for myself.
Hmm.
And in that 1 year, Linda, I grew up 5 years in terms of maturity. Really for the first time being in the real world and having responsibilities and what have you. And after a year, my father was better. And my grandmother, God bless her, gave me $4,000 of her savings her whole life to go back to Alfred and pay my tuition. But I was a very different person at that point, and I'm on Dean's list. I was required to take my third year over again, just about. So it took me 5 years to get through a 4-year engineering course. But I went back to Alfred for 2 years. I was on Dean's list most semesters. I was a leader in my fraternity. I did put on rock and roll shows on campus to pay my tuition. I brought acts that had never been to Alfred before. In fact, one act for people who are old enough to remember Wilson Pickett. I brought Wilson Pickett to the campus. He had had three number one hits, and he was the first black soul artist ever to appear at Alfred. And and so all of a sudden I was doing all these things and making good grades and what have you. And I was just a different person. And I credit Alfred. I love Alfred. Basically for sticking by me. When I went back to Alfred, after that year I was out, I was afraid to call him up and say I was coming back. So I
Mhm.
just physically showed up. And while the registrar, his name was Fred Gertz, was a little shocked to see me, he said, "Well, Peter, I'm glad you're back, but you're going to have to repeat some some classes." And that was fine. And but so Alfred turned me around, was one of the elements, big one, and stood by me. And so subsequent to that, and I have been on the Alfred board since 1990, Board of Trustees. I was the chairman of the board for 6 years. I've gotten two um, doctorate degrees, honorary doctorate degrees from Alfred, and so on. And some of my best moments lately at Alfred have been reunions
Mhm.
where I'm introduced to people who were there when I was there, and you can see the look on their face. They're saying, "This can't be the guy we remember who
Mhm.
was a complete screw up. No, 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 this can't be. This guy was chairman of the board of Alfred. No, it
Mhm.
can't be." And I love that. I can see the body language, and it's a lot of fun actually.
Yeah.
But thank God for Alfred University.
I appreciate you sharing all that story, and I hope the listeners really take that in, that, you move forward. That's what this podcast is about. And to hear people's stories and how they kept moving forward, and the different people that came in their lives that helped open those doors. So, from the Navy to Marvel and beyond. So looking back across your career and through all of that, what thread do you now see that's connecting all those chapters of your life?
Well, I often say that I was born with an adventurer gene. And as a result, I'm probably a much bigger risk taker than most human beings. But there was something about the adventure, the risk, the idea of trying something new that always got me. And of course, I wasn't born with a gene. It really comes from how I was raised and what my parents did and what my grandparents did,
Mhm.
because they were all risk takers and they all could not sit at a desk. That was not going to work for them.
Mhm.
So my grandparents, three of the four were immigrants, okay, from Italy, from from Scotland, from from Sweden, and then one from Scotland spoke English, but the others did not. What was it like to come to a country not speaking you know, leaving your family behind and coming? And as I got to know my grandparents, of course, growing up, they were, they were get out there people and get it done and so on. So that was my model. I could talk about my grandparents forever, but the point is that was a model for me. And then there was my parents. My father had been Boy Scout of the Year in Manhattan at age 14. It was all city basketball at Stuyvesant High School in New York City, which at that time it may still be the number one academic public high school in New York. He went to the University of North Carolina. They won the national championship in 1940. He was the sixth man. He was a Navy officer in South Pacific, World War II, and in the Korean War. He was a lieutenant in the New York City Fire Department. This is somebody who could not how to get out there, obviously, and so on. My mother was an EMT for 30 years. She was before World War II a diver, getting ready for trying out for the Olympics. Of course, the Olympics didn't happen when World War II started. And then she became, but my mother was always interested in people. Her friends were a menagerie of people. I was raised by my grandparents, my parents, with no prejudices against anyone. I never heard a negative about anyone based on their religion, their color, their ethnic background, their sexual orientation. No. The greatest gift that I got
Mhm.
from my parents was I had none of those sacks of weight on my shoulders about people going out in life. All I heard was, Peter, there's good people in the world and bad people. You have to figure out who's who. That was it. So um, I think that that background made me, when I was 8 years old, my father was called up for he was a Navy officer in the reserves and was called up for the Korean War.
Wow.
And we went in 2 years from New York City to Pensacola, Florida,
Mm.
to Bremerton, Washington, where there's a big mothball fleet or was. That's near Seattle. Then we went to San Diego, the biggest naval base, I think, in the country. Then we went to Philadelphia, in the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. My father was stationed there for a year. I did the fourth and fifth grades in different places. I had to make new friends everywhere. Didn't seem hard. It was okay. And because of that experience, Linda, I became comfortable with surprises, with being thrown into, I'm going to say, alien environments, alien different, not alien bad. At a very young age, I was comfortable with change. I was comfortable with challenges, problems, and I was raised to go right at problems when you know you have them. And I think so that's maybe one of the things that is unique about my background that makes me somewhat different from other people.
Yeah. It's that it gave you that resilience to again keep going and keep moving forward. And now I want to get into the next phase and how you led with years of leading organizations through change. I mean, many years. I listed all the companies off in the intro, but leading those organizations through change, what did it teach you about people?
Well, first of all, yes, I've done 7 turnarounds successfully. Everyone remembers Marvel, where I was the CEO coming out of bankruptcy, and I was CEO for almost 4 years, and then vice chairman for 6. And then after that 10-year run, we sold to Walt Disney for $4.5 billion. So, but I was, I'd grown up in the melting pot of New York City. I had great experiences dealing with a diversity of people. And I think, in a sense, although I didn't think of it at the time, being in training for leadership, for understanding, how to work with other people successfully, regardless of their backgrounds and so on. So I think that that really helped me. And I'm also I'm one of these people who, if I was riding a bicycle right now and I was going down the road I've never been on, I'd be dying to see what's over the next hill. It's just my nature. And I'm a fixer. I like the challenge of problems, believe it or not. It's a little weird, I know, but we all have problems. We're all human. By definition, we're not perfect. We're going to run into problems personally, professionally, academically, and so on. But it all comes back to the phase of my life growing up as a young man.
And you definitely solved problems. And I love the what you used as far as getting on the bicycle and going over and conquering more. So I appreciate that. So, you know, working with these turnaround companies, how successful or how much of a successful turnaround really is about the culture and trust
Mm.
rather than the strategy.
Mm. Well, you can have the most perfect strategy and tactics in the world and still be unsuccessful because you are correct. It's all about people. It's all about, and in my cases where I went into situations where the businesses were in a lot of trouble. And so you're walking through the door on day one into an atmosphere where there's great uncertainty and people are frankly afraid. They don't know about their future. They know the businesses are very challenged, to say the least.
Mm.
And some new guy is coming through the door who they've probably never even heard of most of the time, and so on. And so what I've tried to do, and seems to have worked, is I'm first very honest with everybody in the organization. I want to communicate regularly. I've learned that people would rather hear bad news than no news. I know that sounds a little strange, but actually, that's what I found. And so I communicate very regularly with the organization, the good news and the bad news. People know there's bad news, and so there's no reason trying to hide it. But I also love to celebrate the successes, and even very minor successes I would make a fairly big deal out of, because for morale purposes and what have you. But it was all about working with people, communicating, listening to them. Very, very important for me to, you know, uh, someone recent when I was at Marvel, a reporter came in and wrote a story about me and called my leadership by walking around. And so, I walk the halls almost every day and just talking to people about sometimes just little stuff, sometimes personal. Where are you from? You know,
Mm.
you have a family, but also talking about our challenges and what have you, and not hiding those challenges. And and again, I think that approach to other human beings was very important for me.
Yeah, I want to pull out a couple things you said, minor successes, celebrating those. And then as I'm hearing you talk about walking around and just little connections, relationships. And I have to tell the listeners, Peter and I just met each other last Friday. And I already felt like, wow, yes, relationships are big. And it's not even overtaking a conversation. It's just learning about each other and that small success. I want to even say in that in our own conversation. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And you also mentioned Marvel, and I'm going to go a little bit deeper into Marvel. What gave you the confidence that there was still a future worth fighting for at Marvel?
Well, first of all, um, I never took these jobs without doing some homework. And in the case of Marvel, which was a public company listed on New York Stock Exchange, had been stayed on the stock exchange even through the bankruptcy, I
Mm,
could get a lot of public information. That's
mm,
the first thing. And look, the second thing was, there are people you could talk to that had been in Marvel or knew Marvel. You have to do a little searching and talking to people who do they know, but getting a point of view. And I had learned through the first six turnarounds that it was always going to be, as much as I thought I could figure it out from outside the company, it was going to be very different when I was inside. And some of the plans that I thought we should have to work out weren't going to. That happened in every turnaround and so on. But I want to talk about culture for a minute, because you mentioned culture. And I always like to say that the culture was bankrupt in every turnaround I went to.
mm,
And by culture, I mean the value system,
mm,
how people were treated inside the company and outside, how valued partners, suppliers, customers were treated or mistreated in many cases. Okay. And so culture was always something I could tackle right away. The thing about culture, though, is you can say, hey, our new culture is going to be this. We're going to treat so and so right. We're not going to, we're going to embrace diversity. But if you don't actually back it up with your own actions as a leader, no one's going to believe you. They won't, till you do it.
mm,
And so I always knew that there'd be certain things that would happen where, people will do things that will test me in
mm.
terms of culture. I actually welcomed them, believe it or not, because I needed those experiences to show people I wasn't kidding. Sexual harassment.
Mm,
In several instances, I ran into cases of sexual harassment
mm.
and I fired people on the spot.
Yeah.
and so the organization is saying, whoa, Peter isn't kidding. And the whole organization knew what was going on. There are no secrets in these businesses, really. There's no secret. They all know. So Peter says we're going to embrace diversity. We're not going to, treat each other right. And then he doesn't do anything about this. I would have lost, talk about trust. I would have lost the entire organization. But I was actually happy to do it. And so on. A lot of examples about backing up what we're talking about in terms of, culture. And takes time to fix culture. You can come up with strategies and tactics that you need to embrace fairly quickly. But actually changing how people think really is, as you know, a big challenge, and it will take time. And if you're in a multinational organization, and most of mine were multinational, then you have the over cultures in other countries to also embrace and work with. So it won't take, I sometimes read or see people give interviews. They came into a company and they'll say, "Oh, I changed the culture in
Hmm.
3 months." I'm thinking to myself, impossible.
Hmm.
And of course, 6 months later, I hear they got fired.
Hmm.
So, um, culture, values, how you treat each other. And the other part of culture is, okay, what do we have to do to be really, really good, to really win here? Yeah, we want to be an A at everything, but no organization can be. It's just not possible. You can't be an A at everything. So what are the ones we got to be an A, an A plus? Oh, customer service. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We see why, well, why do we have our worst people in customer service?
Hmm.
New products. We need great new products every year. Why do we have people with no new products background in that department? It's those kinds of things. Okay. So, you, it takes time, but these were always the challenges that I knew I was going to face walking through the door.
And Peter, as I'm listening to you, you've taken us through part of your, not part, a good part of the journey of your life. And I think about all that you have gone through in your younger part of your life, the value system, the way people are treated, the integrity, a lot of it was learned. And I want listeners to understand that because I'm going to go into talking about young people now, but you were watching and listening to all those other people that were around you at such a young age, and you learned it from there too. And then of course applied it to your own self. So again, you've witnessed so much change throughout your young career, throughout your career period. What opportunities excite you, though, most about today's young people?
Well, you're aware that half of my life is still what you might call a professional life. I'm chairman of a nanotechnology company in Luxembourg. I've got other professional involvements and so on. But the other half of my life has to do with leadership.
Mm.
I'm very concerned about the status of leadership around the world, and I often make a bold statement and debatable, but my bold statement is that we have less good leadership in the world than ever in human history.
Mm.
And I'm not talking just about the US, but I'm not even talking politics here. We have chaos. We have people who are not good leaders in important positions all around the world. The second thing that bothers me even more is the fact that young people are not learning leadership. And why aren't they? And what can we do about that? What can they do about it? What can their parents do? What can their schools do? What can they do professionally when they're, young men and women to learn leadership? Because they're not, and we need them to step up.
Mm. So, you and I spoke on Friday, and we discussed the importance of creativity, of teamwork, and collaboration, and all what you've been talking about. But do you worry that some of these skills are becoming harder to develop in an increasingly digital world?
Yeah, you've hit on a very, very good point, Linda. So I still talk to senior executives whether it's in business, non-business, could be the military, could be politics, it doesn't matter. And I hear consistently complaints about young people. A lot of these people hire new college grads, for example, and find that the new college grads, have tremendous problems in the work environment. They, I often hear a couple of things about young people, and it's not everybody, of course not. There are exceptions, certainly. But what I do hear, unfortunately, is things like they have no social skills.
Mm.
They actually sit in a meeting and can't look you in the eye. They are not thin-skinned, they have no skin. The minute there's anything negative, the slightest thing that, frankly, Linda, you and I would laugh at, they're devastated because they've never had to deal with setbacks before. We can get into why that is. And the third thing is that they have no work ethic. Oh, I think I won't show up for work today. I don't feel like it, but I'm not going to call in. Or I think I'll quit. I'm not going to tell them I'm quitting. This is it's a real problem. And it stems all back to the issues that I'm talking about young people not learning leadership. Now, why? Why aren't they learning leadership? Well, the biggest single reason is the lack of face-to-face experiences with other human beings in a diversity of situations. I just described my growing up and things I went through. And in the Navy, I learned more about leadership actually in the Navy. I'm a Vietnam veteran, as you know. That's where I really learned leadership. But again, a lot of diversity. And that's been my life. And kids today don't get those experiences. The first reason is simply it's technology, it's cell phones, it's Zoom calls. Although we're on a Zoom call, Zoom is better than certainly a phone.
True.
Uh, but they don't get face-to-face experiences so that they learn the instincts of leadership.
Mhm.
That's the only way you can really learn the instincts is by dealing with other people in a diversity of different situations. Geographic is important to see that there's different worlds. People think and live differently than you do. And guess what? They got some things right. It's not, and maybe you don't.
Yeah.
There's, as I said, there's academic diversity, there's personal diversity, there's professional diversity. And they're not getting that because of technology. Second problem we have is overparenting.
Mhm.
And this used to be a problem with the rich. Now it's spread to the middle class.
Mhm.
So what do I mean by overparenting? Very simple. Kids are not allowed to make any decisions for themselves growing up. And well-meaning parents think that they don't want their children to have any negative thoughts about themselves ever. So when they get out in the real world and find out, uh-oh, this isn't what I expected, okay? I actually have to do stuff and there's some bit, I'm going to have some problems and what they're really devastated. Now, these are well-meaning parents, but you must let your kids fail. It's okay. And I often say, you have to fail to succeed because you have to learn from your failures. And I remember most of the gory details from my failures. I remember my successes only from 40,000 feet. I
Mhm.
really don't. And and so let your kids fail. It's okay. But parents today make every decision, even the slightest decision for them. And I hate it when I go into a restaurant and I see a family of five sitting at a table. The kids are all on tablets and the parents are on their cell phones. They're not talking to each other. I mean, come
Yeah.
on. And by the way, I know parenting today, Linda, is much harder
Of
than it
course.
was when I was a parent decades ago, or even my kids parenting was harder for my kids, but even more, harder today for other people. It is. There's so many challenges, and I understand. It takes courage to be a parent today. There was always took courage, but now it really takes courage. Let your kids fail. Tell your kids, no, you got a bad grade. It's not the teacher's fault.
Right.
You blew it. You didn't make that elite soccer or lacrosse team. Okay. Maybe it was maybe the coach was bad. That's true. Or maybe you weren't good enough. And you have a decision to make. Work harder or quit. But it's your decision, not the parents. Oh, parenthood. Here's the instrument you'll play. Oh, here's who your friends will be. You know, it's so and so. Here's the courses you'll take.
Mm-hmm.
And these, again, well-meaning parents, but they are absolutely messing up their kids.
Right.
And we can go on. There's other reasons. Our culture is a frivolous
Right.
celebrity culture. Again, if your kids are really need to know what Kim Kardashian had for breakfast, you really have a problem. And we can laugh about it, but it is sad,
No,
frankly.
I hear you.
You know what I'm getting at. And then you see it everywhere. And that's not the kids' fault. They grow up with this. And
Well, I mean, and we
another,
were talking about the technology, and I think that like you said, parenting is different and harder now. And but the why, and you can put social media into that. I mean,
yep.
social media, we didn't have that when we were growing up, and it's very hard to monitor it as you're raising children. And you said Kim, Kardashian or whoever, that's a big part of the social media platform. So yeah, it is a very difficult time. But I want to go back to what you were saying though about the failure part because you shared your story and how academic probation, and to the listeners, I was on academic probation also at Alfred. And but the failure part is so important, and I'm not sure people really grab onto that it's okay to fail. Even, my son's baseball team just made it to the championship, but they lost to the last game, and now they're going to move on though. But he said, you learn from that, Mom. Well, oh my goodness. Okay, so
Mm,
I appreciate you saying that failure, I'm not going to say it is okay. You're not there yet. You got to make
mm,
some changes,
sure.
and you did that.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you though, because your creative mind, I'm thinking about what you said about relationships, but what advice would you give young people? And I'm going to tell you, young people will be listening to this because they're going to see the word Marvel. So as they're listening to this, what advice could you give these young people about balancing technology because it is their world and we
Mm,
all need to understand that. But
mm.
balancing technology with creativity, curiosity, and relationships.
Well, it's a real challenge for kids today. There's no question about it. It's very hard. I think that they there's a couple of other things I recommend for learning leadership. Um, the first is doing volunteer work.
Uh,
And you can start when you're 7 years old and have a lemonade stand for
True.
for some cause. Great. Or you can be a candy striper in a hospital, or you can be in a soup kitchen, or there's lots of things, and you will learn a lot about human beings doing volunteer work. I think that's very important. I, but I also think become an expert in something. Because of technology today, kids and adults as well don't go deep on any subject anymore. And you if you get into something you're really interested in, go for it. If you're a parent and your 5-year-old likes dinosaurs, great. Get those books, read about dinosaurs to your kids. But as you get over, I always had interests that hobbies, call them whatever, that I always love to get into the depth of. And it's also very relaxing, frankly, to be able to escape from some of your everyday challenges through that. So I think it's very important. Um, you also, people have to figure out what is real on the internet and what isn't, because there's so much fake news, fake everything people coming up with. And even I can get surprised occasionally and fooled. I figured it out now. But, it's sad
Yeah.
because you need to be in touch with the real world. I wanted to say also, I have a book out called Superhero Leadership, and young people can, this is 28 essentials for learning leadership, things that I think I learned, many of them the hard way. And I talk about the hard way and my failures, but what was good out of all of that. And this is out. You can get it from Amazon and elsewhere. So it's something that might be, useful to young people. There are 28 chapters. Some of them are 2 pages long, some are 10, but there's 28 essentials to talk about. It includes some of the ones we've already talked about.
I appreciate you sharing that too, because books, pick them up. There's so
Mm.
much in there. And because kids have access to this technology and everything online, they're not reading the book. But the book that you just talked about, even the things in there, people could tab it and then go back to it. So I want, kids to or young people to understand that. I also want to go back to what you're saying about getting involved and doing the lemonade stand, service, learning from service. That's a
Yes.
great example of it, even
Yes.
at 7 years old. So, Peter, I just have one more question for you. And well, actually, I have two. Let me start with this one first. I've been writing the Substack articles, and it's around the question, who are you when the title is gone? So, my wonder is, after a lifetime of leadership, how do you answer that question today? And I don't know if your title's really gone because you're an amazing person, but things have changed. So, a lifetime of leadership, how do you answer that question when the title is not there?
Yeah, well, I'm never going to retire, first of
No,
all.
true.
And my wonderful wife of 55 years
Yeah.
has figured that out and has come to grips with it. It wasn't easy for her, by the way.
Oh,
But yeah, my personality is such that I need to be involved, if you will, in
yeah.
things. I just do. So long after the business end of my life ends, and it hasn't yet, I'll still have the leadership. I'm working on a summer program for high ability high school students, for
Good.
example, to learn leadership. Um, I've got 2 podcasts, as you know, right now on leadership, 2 different podcasts. We have other programs that I'm working on that I'm excited about. I'm still giving speeches around the world and what have you. And that hopefully that part will never end. And actually, leadership is a subject that most humans don't aspire to leadership. And we could talk about why that is, but um, everybody's still interested in the subject, whether they want to be a leader or not. And I think the kind of things that I do and the things that are in my book, this will sell for the next 20 years. It will not be a New York Times bestseller. It's basic. It's basic leadership for people. But it's not pedantic. I'm not a teacher. I wouldn't be good at that. Okay. It's just mostly I have a story, the Wall 28, at least one story that I lived where I thought I learned, a lesson. As I said, sometimes the hard way.
You said the word story, and I want to end with that one because and you're definitely a very big advocate of this and have shared how learning people's story is so important, and that's how you're able to lead, like you say, those relationships. So when people tell your story years from now, beyond the companies, the titles that you held, the business successes, what do you hope they say about the way you lived and the way you led?
Well, I hope they would be saying that in my own small way, I changed the world. And that may be 2 people, or it might be millions.
Hmm.
We'll only know that in the future. But that's what I'm trying to do is make the world better for everybody. Starting, and comes to the leadership thing that I'm talking about. That would be very nice. I won't know it because I won't be around, but I feel good enough because of feedback I've had and so on that I've done some of that. And yeah, I really like, Linda, what I do. And yeah, I need it psychically. It's true, but I like what I do. And I still meet people. I meet a lot of new people every week, and I still enjoy that. and they can be all ages from all countries and all different sizes, shapes, whatever. That's okay. I enjoy that.
Yeah.
And still working on some other new things like live events for leadership for kids. And, you know, I'll keep at that as long as I possibly can.
Yeah, Peter, I do not want this interview to end, but I want to thank you though for again giving the time and joining me today and for sharing your wisdom, your experiences and your reflection. Your journey reminds us that leadership is more about results. It's about creating a vision that inspires people to believe in possibility
Mhm.
and move forward together. And ultimately, success is measured not by the titles we hold, but by the impact that we have on others and the legacy we leave behind. And you have very much impacted my life in the last 4 days, which is awesome.
Well,
So,
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I
yeah,
really do. You've made my week, believe me.
thank you. So, again, to the listeners, until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep moving forward.